So that whole cinematic sequence was filmed with the DJI Osmo Pocket and the DJI Mavic Air. Now you can get cinematic footage with pretty much any camera, but today we're going to talk about cinematic footage with DJI Osmo Pocket. All right, let's get into it. What is cinematic? Now, cinematic can be broken down into a whole bunch of different things, but pretty much what a lot of people think is cinematic is what you usually see in the cinema or pretty much what is in theater. But we'll break it down into a few different things, starting with camera settings. Now, the basics of camera settings is we're going to go through frame rate first. Now, frame rate you can shoot in 24 or 25 frames per second, depending on which country you're in, but 24 is about the standard that you will see in the cinemas. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to shoot at 24 frames per second, because you can actually get slow motion as well. So you can shoot at 60 frames or 120 frames and slow it back down into that same timeline. So with the DJI Osmo Pocket, you can shoot 4K at 60 frames, slow it back down to your 24 frames or 25 frame timeline, and it makes it really nice slow motion and gives you that nice cinematic look. Just watch out when you do shoot in 60 frames per second that it does overheat a little bit over time, so just be wary of that. Secondly, your shutter speed. Now you've got to keep your shutter speed twice your frame rate. Now the reason for this is that you keep it 180-degree shutter so that you get the right amount of motion blur. Now when it comes to motion blur, if you are shooting at 24 frames per second, you want to keep your shutter speed at 1/48th of a second. If you go 1/60th, 1/80th, 1/250th, you'll start to see a sharper image and less motion blur. And if you do film in 120 frames per second, you need it as close to that 180-degree shutter as possible to get really nice, smooth motion blur when it comes to that footage. Now, when it comes to keeping that shutter at 180 degrees, you will need to use ND filters or adjustable ND filters. So this will darken the amount of light that comes into your sensor and allow you to keep that shutter speed down at twice the frame rate. Now, ISO or gain. Now this is a tough subject because some of the new cameras these days, like the A7 III, can shoot really high ISO and introduce pretty much little to no grain. Now digital grain is those little spicks and specks in your image when your ISO gets up to a really high point. With the DJI Osmo Pocket, it is between 100 and 3200 ISO. If you do get up to 3200 ISO, you will notice a lot of grain. So if you are shooting in darker situations, I do suggest lighting up the subject as much as possible, obviously to your liking and to what kind of mood you're going for as well. But shooting in a flatter picture profile can also help with capturing a higher dynamic range. So that brings me to my next point, is picture profile. Now when it comes to the picture profile, it only has normal and D-Cine-alike. Now D-Cine-alike captures a little bit more dynamic range from your highlights and shadows. This will also give you a flatter picture profile, which allows you to put more colors in your post-processing. So color grading, you can throw LUTs on there just to bring up the vibrance and create your own feel to the footage and make it as cinematic as you can. Now focus. Now, you just gotta make sure that your object is, or subject is, in focus. This does have object tracking. If you just draw that little box onto the subject, it will track that subject. So it'll keep it in focus, but you just gotta be wary of that depth of field because it doesn't have infinity focus. There is a focal point and it has an aperture of f2.0, so just be wary of that. Now, aspect ratio. Aspect ratio can do a lot for a film. Now, there isn't really a standard when it comes to your aspect ratio. It comes down to the creative choice, but a common one is to have your 235:1. So that is your aspect ratio, or the cinematic bars that you see at the bottom and on the top there, little black bars there. You can do that by putting them in post and just putting your crop boxes there, or you can export it into your settings and make sure you're exporting it in that cropped factor. That's how you properly do cinematic bars. So there are other techniques that you can use to make your footage more cinematic. Now, audio. Audio is pretty much one of the most important factors when it comes to cinematic footage, or any footage regardless. The key is having real sharp audio and as clear as possible without any noise possible. So keeping your microphone as close to the subject as possible. If you can't have a microphone or a boom mic, have a lav mic to try and keep it as close to the subject as possible, because you want crisp audio. Now, framing and composition. Framing is massive. Getting the correct composition is extremely important. I do have a video linked up here that you can watch as well. It is a very, very old video, but it explains framing and composition quite well. But just making sure that you keep your subject in frame, and also you can use the rule of thirds guide, which is your 2 horizontal lines and your 2 vertical lines. Lighting. Lighting is another important aspect when it comes to filming. Obviously, because you want to have nice lighting so you don't have to bump up that ISO, introduce grain, and then overall have a better quality image. You generally must have a key light. Wherever you are, you must have a key light. So this is my key light. Sometimes you'll have a backlight and a fill light. Just to create a little bit more lighting there. Especially when it comes to filming in sunset, you do want to film as close to sunset as possible because it is nice, soft lighting. If you do film in harsh lighting, don't film directly so the actor is facing the sun. Have them face the opposite direction and it'll be much softer and just exposed for the actor as well. Music. Music is pretty important when it comes to creating that feel and that mood of your cinematic footage. Now, if it is a very high energetic footage or film, you must have high energetic music. If it is a really soft and sad film, you want to have soft and sad symphonies playing sort of music. Obviously, choose the music that suits well with what kind of footage you have and what kind of feel you're trying to portray. Transitions. Now, transitions are really popular when it comes to YouTube. There are a few films that I can name off that do have some transitions, and they are used tastefully, but definitely use them wisely. So if you do some transitions, especially with some B-roll, that's kind of cool. You can do in-camera transitions. That's generally the best way to do it. Or you can do Premiere Pro or Adobe After Effects transitions as well. Mise-en-scène. Now, this is a French word pretty much that means what is in the scene. Now, you just got to make sure that whatever is in frame, you have to make sure it is there on purpose. So if you do have something that's not meant to be in frame, just move it out of the way, clean it out of the way, and then just make sure you recompose your shot. So everything that is in frame is there on purpose. Now, you don't want to shoot next to plain walls. You want to shoot with walls that actually have paintings or some textures, something like that. So it's not completely plain. Pull the actors away from the wall and then have that depth of field as well. So that's it from me, guys. Please smash that like button, comment below if you found this useful, or if you need any more questions answered on your DJI Osmo Pocket. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you already haven't. Guys, my name's Jason Morris, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Let's get it.